Hello Internet, right now we're listening to the track that we're going to make through the course of this video. We're going to start with an unpatched case and then work our way through to what you're listening to right now. What we're focusing on is getting like a whoopy bass sound. You might hear it in a Mike Parker track, for example, where you're doing pitch envelopes on, in our case, we're going to very basic square wave through a Moog clone filter. So we're going to be making pitch envelopes to provide some motion to the bass line, and then occasionally ping the filter to, or trigger the filter rather, to add some drama and personality and events and a sense of rhythm. Once we get that figured out, we'll dial in some effects and make it sound nice, and then after the effects we'll work on adding some percussion from a future retro transient, which I think of as kind of being like an octatrack. You can put samples in it and really change their character. So that's what we've got here. Once the track's all finished, we'll have a little jam, some of which you're listening to right now. And then after that I've got some outtakes from trying to get the oscillator on the Moog to sound good, which I never did, so we end up using the LFO as our oscillator source there. I should mention I'm actually editing this video in a DAW. I use Reaper as my DAW. Reaper has some video tools, so you can add titles and fade in and fade out, do picture-in-picture, zoom. So that's been an easy way to get started making these videos instead of having to invest more time in another piece of software or money in another piece of software. So score 1 again for Reaper. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll get started right away. Sounds good, doesn't it? So, what we're going to do is we're going to get creative. So we're going to do a little workaround. Rather than wait for these to not sound so terrible, we're going to use the LFO as an oscillator. There's a whole LFO modulation section over here, and there are a LFO output here for a triangle wave, and then here's an LFO for a square wave. We're going to use the square wave for this because the square wave has a higher frequency content, so it'll be more chunk for the filter to play with. And what we're looking for in the end is a lot of real estate to modify or modulate or play with the filter. The other thing we have here is we have an input for the LFO. So we'll be able to control the pitch of the LFO. So instead of just being one wah, 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 speed, it'll be able to go wah, 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 wah. Did you get that? And I'm going to use all, these are from Tip Top, they're stackable cables. Or I'm going to use these wherever I can. So let's patch the audio out. I'm going to move this audio out into the Empress Euroboro or Zoya, or sometimes they call it the Zebu. I'm going to move that to the inputs of the Zebu. Hopefully you heard that okay. And right now I have this set to like a 2 different kinds of reverb and a delay, and I don't know what we're going to use here, but we'll have options. I heard a Q&A, maybe it was Molten Modular. The question was, how come these YouTube demos sound so good? And the answer was, because you put your best reverb on them. More on that later, probably. My best reverb is actually at the other end of this audio interface right here, but I'm using the audio interface right now to record my voice. There's a microphone right, well, it's right there. So we can't use that for reverb, so we're using the Zoya here. And right now everything's turned down, so it's effectively dry. So next step would be we need to take the LFO square wave and put that to the external input of the mixer circuit here. So I'll grab another stackable. By the way, off camera over there, I have a rack. Maybe I'll get a still of it in a minute and let you see what that's looking like. But it's a cable tree, or cable tray, which was a gift from Dr. Rec. You can check out Dr. Rec on Instagram if you want. They do visuals, they do audio. They are the, as far as I'm concerned, the source of knowledge for acid type music, the acid house style music. Anyway, so we've got the LFO sound, square wave coming out of here, going to the external in. We'll turn on the external in. Here's the volume for the external in. And just here is the speed of the LFO. So you can see this light blinking. When the LFO is in low, you can see it's this, and it's a square wave, so we're getting one of these. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit, and we'll see the light speed up, and then eventually go what looks like solid. So I'm going to keep this down here all the way, because we're going to be modulating that speed from the rampage here. So let's see if we can hear this. We've got our audio hooked up to the Zoya. We've got the Zoya hooked up to the mixer. Let's gate it. So now what we need to do is we have to have the amplifier circuit open up to let that sound through. And the way we're going to do that is we have a gate or a trigger sequencer here called the Schottky ratchet. Schottky is the manufacturer, ratchet is the name of the device. And you can see it's got 16 steps here. The first step is lit up, so for the first output it's going to trigger the gate on this, and what that's going to do is trigger the envelope on the clone here to let the sound out when the gate triggers. And then what we can do is we can control how long the sound plays. In our case, we're going to want the sound to play pretty much continuously, so we're going to mess with this envelope until it sounds like a nice, clean, continuous held sound. So pulling a stackable out of number 1 here, and then triggering the LC gate. You might hear a little click, click, click. Alright, and let's speed up the LFO rate here. Alright, so that's not bad. We'll turn the sustain up, and then we'll turn the decay all the way up. And we're getting a little click at the start there. So if you turn up the attack, that should get rid of the click. So that's turning it off at the mixer so I can talk. So that sounds like that's going to be usable to me. And I use a stackable here, so again, if we want to like connect this gate signal, or trigger signal rather, to one of the other inputs, we can do that. But let's keep moving. Next step is we're going to take let's take a different gate out of the sequencer here. So let's go to channel number 2 on the sequencer. And I'm going to, instead of having the first step in 16, I'm going to have the 8th or 9th rather step in 16. So we'll hear the volume gate, and then we'll hear the filter gate, and we can play around with that later. So I'm going to pull a clock out of Pam's new workout here, and I'm going to pull this one. And right now this is set to ×1, so basically this is going to be on the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And we'll trigger the rampage. And we're just going to use the left side of the rampage, so just this side of the rampage for now. And the left slider here is the rise time, so you can picture this as another LFO, and how long it takes to go up to its maximum value. In this case it's going to go up very, very quickly. And then this is the decay time. This will be how long it takes to come back down to 0. And you can see the light here. Can you see that blinking when it's rising? And then this light's on when it's falling. And here's just the signal strength for the signal itself. So let's see if I can slow this down a little bit. There's the trigger, it's rising, this is getting brighter, and now it's falling, and this is getting more dim. And then it's just going to repeat, it's going to repeat with the trigger. So let's pull this out, and connect it to the control voltage for the LFO. So that's going to change the speed of the LFO. I'm going to leave this out for a sec. We'll turn up the volume. Alright, now let's plug it in. Okay, so that's doing a thing. It's not exactly a useful thing. I'm going to speed it up. Okay. But let's see if we can have it not go so high pitched. What I'm going to do is pull this wire out and put it in a tenuverter in line there. This is like a DIY kit from RYO. It's called the air attenuator because it just floats around in the air rather than being racked in a case here. We'll put it in line. See the arrows? The signal comes in here, comes out here, plug it back in. And now when we turn this down, that highest pitch will be lower. So now we're getting like a dive bomb sound, and that's going to be useful for us. Let's speed that up a little bit. So let's leave that there for now. Now let's mess around with the filter. Take another trigger, and this time we're going to take it out of sequencer track number 2, and we're going to have this trigger on the 9th step trigger the filter, and the filter works the same way as the loudness contour: attack, decay, sustain. We've got our filter setting right here, kind of dark, kind of open. And what we're going to do is try to get some music out of the difference between these two things. So let's plug in the gate here. You can hear the click already. Oh, and this is the amount. So this is the cutoff, this is the resonance, which makes it sound more nasal, more narrow, but also makes where the filter is actually pointing louder. And then in the frequency spectrum, and then this is the contour. So this is the amount of envelope that's going to apply to the when the gate is triggered. So I'm going to turn up the decay. I'm going to leave the sustain and the attack down. So we're getting a little percussion on the 9th step here. Let's add some of that resonance. They call it emphasis here. Hear how it gets kind of nasal sounding? Let's see if we get a lower pitch here. That's maybe too low. So I think this is a little fast, meaning we're sending the gates too fast, so I'm going to change this to a 16-step sequencer. Take all these steps off. Okay, so for the gate, we just have the first step going of what's going to be 32 steps. And then for the filter, we just have the 9th step going of what's going to be 32 steps. So we can play around with the volume of the line in here. And what we're going to be doing there is, when we turn up the volume, it's also going to turn up the saturation a little bit. So I've turned it down on the mixer. We'll turn up the saturation here. Feels a little meatier. You get a bunch of different moods by messing with the cutoff frequency here. Let's see if we can't get a visual go. So we have a square wave. Is that coming through? Yeah, it's coming through. We have a square wave there, and you can see it's kind of going like that as the pitch changes. This guy's going to try to automatically figure out a way to get the screen size relevant, so the pitch change is actually way more dramatic, except this the display here is trying to compensate. So we've got the volume up, we've got the envelope up, we've been playing around with the filter, we get different moods here. Let's put on a little secret sauce. This is the room verb from the Zoya. It's pretty dramatic straight away. This is the ghost verb. It has a lot more personality, so it's a little more noisy. I'm going to keep that to a light touch. And just for funsies, let's see what the delay does. Well, I like that. But let's turn it off for now so we can see what we're doing. We'll just keep a little verb on. Speaking of verb, we have another reverb on the mixer that we haven't used yet. This one's got a ton of personality. It's a bandpass filter on the Chaos pad that goes into the Chaos pad reverb. So let's turn that up a little bit and just see what it sounds like. You can hear that bandpass really accentuating the cutoff point, that nasal right there. I'm going to leave that just a light touch for now, so we can hear what we're doing. Let's go ahead and play with the envelope here. So right now we have a very short attack, so the effect is that the frequency is basically going downward. Is that a good? That's not a great visual. Frequency is going downward. So let's switch this. We're going to try a little performance here and see what it sounds like in the process of switching it. Because what we're looking for at this point, A, we want to get like a pattern that sounds nice, and B, we want to figure out the inflection points, the places at which we can find sweet spots, and then how to get from one sweet spot to the next. So let's increase the attack here. Now it's got like kind of a wobbly, sick. Now I'm decreasing the decay. Like that. We have another knob here on the Rampage. I don't know if you can make out the little icons here, but the knob is going to change the shape of the attack and the decay. I suspect it's the difference between a exponential and logarithmic, but I don't want to make something up. But it's in that territory. So we'll turn this over to the right here. That's cool. Let's try it over towards the left. That's cool too. You could imagine a track or a performance where you're kind of wandering back and forth between these different settings. I'm going to set that back to neutral and mess with something else. So now we're going to change the rate at which the LFO is triggered, so how frequency the LFO is gated. Right now it's set to 1, which is, well, you see the light here. I'm going to turn it up to, the next setting on the PAMs here is 1.3, so it's a little more frequent. I'll turn it back and turn it up again so you can hear it. Slower. Faster. Let's pair that with a random drum beat so we can get some context. This is times 1 for that pitch wobble. This is 1.3. A little faster. Like that. And you know, your choice here is artistic. It just depends what you're going for in the end. This is 1.5. I have to make the envelope shorter every time I make it faster because I'm trying to make the envelope last about exactly as long as the frequency of the wobble here. Now let's pull it up to 2. That's faster. You can imagine a different context where each of these makes sense. I'm going to pull it back down to 1. Sounds really slow now in comparison. And what I want to do is I want to mess around with that trigger for the filter, so that rise right there in comparison to the frequency wobble. So for the trigger for the filter, which is right here, this is currently set to a length of 32. I'm going to set it to a length of, set it to 8. Alright, that seems like a lot. Let's set the whole pattern length to 6 for the trigger here. And then let's mess around with the envelope. So what I think about what's cool about this this oddball pattern length of 6 instead of, you know, a multiple of 4, 8, 32, etc., is you can have it fight against the pulse of the track. The track is going bump, 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 but the pulse is like maybe 1.5 of those, and it doesn't wrap evenly at a bar or 2 bars. It takes a while for 6 and 16 to have a common multiple. If you're doing this with a bass pitch, it fights the main pulse of the track more, because the bass is kind of where the rhythm, your body feels the rhythm, whereas your brain feels these higher frequency elements. So I think you can get a little more wonky with the timing of a higher frequency element than you can with a lower frequency element. Let's slow that down a little bit so it happens less frequency. I'm going to change this to, let's change it to 31 instead of 32, which is the main clock. Okay, so now it's going to go to 31 and then trigger. So it's going to be rushing the regular pulse. And if you let this play long enough, 31 times, it'll wrap around and be at the same place. So if you're recording loops, you'll want to do the math and figure out where the loop, the start of the loop and the end of the loop are the same, so that when the loop restarts, it doesn't, feel like a jump. Let's do this, but then let's try it with a step length of 33. So now it's going to be a little slower than the track, and it'll give you a more sleepy, slower feel. Let's try it with a really long step length. pitch, a long decay, and a little amount. Alright, now let's experiment with taking the volume gate. Let's put that right into the control voltage for the filter and see what that does. You get like a crackle. I'm not sure I love it, but let's see if we can turn that into an envelope. So let's take this volume gate. We'll patch that into the trigger input of the other channel on the other channel on the Rampage, and then let's plug that into our cutoff. Nice little short signal there. I like that. Now let's try to bring that back down a notch so it's more subtle. Putting another attenuator in here. We'll turn that all the way up for starters. Turn this into more of a decay situation. Okay. Now I'm turning it down. Now let's play with the time there. And the shape. Listening to that in context, it makes sense. Let's dial back the resonance here. Play around with the shape. Well, let's dial up some flavor. A little bit of delay. Okay, so that's nice. Let's kill some of the percussion, and let's set up a little context. I've got like a little snare drum, what would I call it? Percussion. Honestly, I call it pots and pans. I've got some machine drum samples in here. I've got some samples from a couple other modules like this one, the Alchemy's Castle. I've got a bunch of hi-hats and claps and stuff in here. And this is the Future Retro Transient. This is, I consider it the octatrack of the Eurorack modular world. It's just, you put something in it, and if you want it to sound radically different and a little bit crunchy, this is the way to go. Editing's kind of a bummer. You have to each setting here. But There's a number of internal LFOs, there are internal envelopes. It's got 2 control voltages in. You've got attenuators on each control voltage, so you can fine tune and also kind of jam on it. And then these 2 knobs control the sounds directly. This one I have a filter, this one's sample selection. So I'm going to wire this up. The way we're going to set this up is we're going to pull a trigger out of this one again. We're going to have it trigger this. We're going to have the audio go through this filter here, which is called Twin Peak by Epoch Modular. They also make a Benjalin. The filter is beautiful sounding. It's very organic. It's very round. It's got like maybe a Roland kind of roundness and a lovely resonance. So it's great for like a what would you call it, like a filter bank effect. The biggest downside with this module is it's very quiet. It takes 2 inputs. It's very quiet. So I take the output. I'm going to route it into a Laddic amplifier, basically. Line in here. I'll need an adapter because that hole's too big. Take the line out, and we'll run that into the Pico DSP right here, which will give it a little, well, we'll see what sounds good, but I usually use this setting, which gives it like a very wide delay. So let's get that wired up real quick. Trigger number 3 into the gate. Take the output, we'll run that into the filter, one of the inputs. Take the output of the filter. Boost the volume up here. This is set to all the way up. Take the volume out of this. Run it into this guy. Oops, run it into this guy. Nope, there it is. Pretty dry sounding. Let's just set it so we can hear this thing for now. And we can also modulate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a signal out of the Rampage here. And what that means is we're going to get modulation that's kind of related to what's going on over in the on this thing, on the whoopee noises. So I'll plug this into both of these with one of these tip-top stackables again. And this guy has a couple of outputs. Other than the main outs, it has a minimum output and a maximum output. What that does is it takes this signal and gives you the lower value or the higher value. So I'm going to pull the higher value because that'll give us more real estate to work with. You can already hear that modulating. This knob here is changing which sample it's going to use. I honestly don't remember what that knob does. So I like that pretty good. Let's play with this filter. Okay, so that sounds good. And then let's just see what this effect does. That's fun. It's kind of a wide delay. And then everything else is dry. So let's turn this off. And then play around with the pattern. So you see this trigger, and it's actually 32, so it's 8, 16, and then these ones are all lit up. So let's pull those down. Now, since we're kind of taking random information from the Rampage here, we're not going to get a ton of control out of what's going to happen here. So this might be like a story of happy accidents. So let's listen to it in context. So right here, it seems like it's accentuating the attack of the clone here. Attack of the clone. So let's see if we can get like a reply. So that's kind of syncopated. If it was right here on the dot versus like that. Alright, I like that. Let's see if we can get a different sample. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll come back. I like that too. Let's play with this filter. This is going to be a low pass and a high pass. Not too much personality. This is a low pass. Kind of too low. I want to make sure we get that snap. Alright, and then this is the resonance. This is going to accentuate the filter points here. So let's turn this up and we'll start getting a pitch. Alright, let's stick with that. Let's try some of the effect on it. So the effect can be a little distracting. Let's see if we can't randomize it a little bit. This control voltage input is like turning one of these knobs. I honestly forget which one. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's check what other effects we have here. I think that's a very long-tailed reverb. That's a reverb. So is this. I think this one's a saturation. I kind of like that. Let's hook up some modulation to this one. Over here on the Pam's new workout, you can follow this last light here. It's kind of slowly dimming and brightening. That's set to a random LFO. So let's just hook that up and let it modulate this thing for us. And now, let's add a little bit of that filtered bandpass reverb that we have from the Chaos Pack. Let's solo this. Like that. Again, it really matters what kind of mood you're going for. Let's turn the main up. Take some of the high out on the mixer here. I'm going to call that good. Let's play around with the filter a little bit. Record some audio that we can use for the intro here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Do leave a comment. That way your friends will find this video. Or not, whatever. And thanks for listening. Tune in next week or whenever I come up with another idea for a video. Thanks for watching. just turn this on. Ooh, that does not sound good. Changing the frequency here. Ooh. Nice and stable signal there. All right, let's flip that off. This is for the line in. Oh, there it is. Sounds like feedback. So it's a thing. That's enough of that. Second oscillator, let's see what that sounds like. Ooh, not much. For the record, when I turned this on about 3 minutes ago, these were in audible range, and now they are in inaudible range. So that's the second one. Last oscillator. Inexplicably inaudible range at the moment.